As far as like Bronny James not traveling with the team on road games, and Fred, you saying, well, they stay at the Courtyard Marriott. What has Bronny James done that he shouldn't be able to stay at the Courtyard Marriott? You say, well, they fly commercial. What has Bronny James done where he should be too good to fly commercial? The pros isn't about where you came from, how you were raised, what your parents had. Professional sports is about how well you can contribute. And
Well, I get what you're saying, Ryan Clark, but you got to understand too. I feel like it's not more of like Bronny James saying, "Oh, I don't want to travel," or "I'm too good for this," or "I'm LeBron James' son." I feel like it has something to do with maybe like a safety measure. Have you guys realized, like, if I don't know, Ryan Clark, if you realize, like, this whole time, a lot of people's been bashing Bronny James, because LeBron, he already has a lot of haters. So, his son being a good player as well, playing in the NBA, playing for USC, he's going to have a lot of haters. And him staying at the Courtyard Marriott or some low end hotel and flying commercial, that can actually have a lot of safety concerns when it comes to his son. You got to remember, a lot of people are bashing Bronny James, saying he's not a good player, saying he doesn't deserve to be in the NBA. So imagine he's a 21-year-old kid still, and like you even said it, he didn't grow up hard and tough. He grew up as LeBron James' son, a billionaire with money. So you have to understand, imagine him traveling across the world and you got thousands and thousands of fans from different states. I'm sure he even gets shit in LA, from critics out here saying, oh, he's not good enough. So imagine when he's playing against another team in Atlanta, in New York, in Florida, and those fans that hate the Lakers, they go to the G League games just to, oh, Bronny James, you don't belong here. Thousands of fans targeting this one player just because he's LeBron James' son. I get what you're saying. Yeah, he needs to work and, work for his spot. But you got to understand, he's still a human being. And all those other players, who are dropping 20 points on the G League team as well, they're not experiencing the same hate that Bronny James is going to experience. And also, you have to understand, too, when these guys get off the plane, I can't even really tell you what any of these G League players look like, which means they're not really famous. You got to remember, Bronny James is more famous than probably most of the people in the NBA just because he's LeBron James' son. So when you say, yeah, he doesn't deserve this treatment and stuff like that, but since he's Bronny James' son, I don't think it's about him being soft or trying to get special treatment. I think it's more of like a safety concern for Bronny James. Like a fan going up to him or, saying something to him and then him reacting and, a human being can only take so much. So you gotta think about it from his shoes as well. Like if you had a son and if you were a billionaire, would you want to put your son at risk because you have a lot of fans that hate you, or and with the whole situation? And I know you talk about Scottie Pippen's son and all these other famous NBA players' son, but you got to understand, name one NBA player's son who's as famous as Bronny James. Name any NBA player who's as famous as Bronny James. You know what I'm saying? So you got to think about it. I'm sure if even Michael Jordan's son had got the chance to play in the NBA with his dad, I think potentially, I don't want to speak for anybody, but I would think that any top caliber player that was that famous possibly could have got the same treatment. You know what I'm saying? And I don't think it has nothing to do with him. I'm sure he wants to travel with the team. I'm sure he would love to go state to state and travel and do all that. But I think with everything going on right now and, all that, security measures and stuff like that, I feel like it's safer for Bronny James to play in home games for his own protection, not because he was silver spoon fed or whatever you want to call it. I feel like it's more of a safety precautions. You know, you're gonna have a lot of people. He's going to these other states, and people know he's coming, and they're gonna hate on him, and they're gonna talk all that crap to him. And honestly, I just don't think that's fair because he's LeBron James' son, and I feel like that's something they're doing to protect him.
Dang.
What do you feel about that, Dashi?
That does make sense. I didn't even think about it like that. I thought it was more on a skill level thing, but like you said, it's only going to be home games because it's for a protection.
Right.
That makes sense. Let's see.
You don't get treated differently because of your parents. You get treated differently because of your ability to contribute. And if I'm Bronny James, which I'm not, and I haven't grown up that way, I'm begging Rich Paul, I'm begging JJ Redick, I'm begging my father, please let me travel with this team. Please let me stay at the Courtyard Marriott. Please let me fly commercial. Please let me go somewhere where I'm gonna get up more than 6 shots in 3 games to not only prove it to my organization that I'm worthy of being on this team, but to my damn self.
Yeah.
Right? I've never in my life been the best player on any team. I wasn't the best player on my high school team. I wasn't the best player on my college team. I'm not the best player on this professional team or this G League team. Let me go out and prove that. Because, like, in the end, all of these accomplishments are going to be for LeBron James. Bronny James going to have money, but he ain't going to have, like, the one thing that all of us ever want is proof to ourselves. Like, that's what I wanted. I wanted to be able to walk off the field and be like, man, they didn't draft me and they cut me, but look at me now.
How many times has being who you are helped your children out?
Often.
You want to leverage that.
And what's wrong with that,
You
though?
also want your kids to know that they have to work hard as well.
Honestly, like, we're just talking about the perception of the way that people see Bronny James. I don't know if we're actually saying it's wrong that being Bronny James has helped him, or that people are saying that it's wrong. You know, Rich Paul spoke to the nepotism that you see in the NBA already when you think about organizations. You look at a guy like James Dolan, who was called out by name by Rich Paul. You know, we've seen, though, Austin Rivers play basketball. Austin Rivers was one of the best high school players in the country, if not the best, when he came out. Austin Rivers played amazing at Duke in his 1 year. Austin Rivers earned his way there, and no one said those things about Austin Rivers because people saw Austin Rivers as that player.
That's not true. Austin Rivers actually talks about getting a lot of hate and saying that he was only there because of who his dad was and his dad being the coach. And you have to understand the difference between Austin Rivers and Bronny James is Austin Rivers actually went straight into the NBA. He didn't have to go into the G League, so he wasn't flying commercial or staying at the Courtyard Marriott. Then you got to understand, too, Bronny James is way more famous than Doc Rivers. Austin Rivers, he built a name for his own self, but still, LeBron James is also more famous than Austin Rivers were. And I would say in this day and age, I'm not saying anything based on their games, on who had a more popular mixtape, but I think even Bronny James today in this age is more popular than Austin Rivers was. So, yeah, I think that would still apply. It's not about him, oh, please let me, go stay at the Courtyard Marriott or whatever. I think it's more of a safety concern. I think Bronny kind of understands that, who he is, who his dad is. So I don't think we should be bashing him on wanting to, lower his standards to, and put himself in jeopardy, have a fan throw beer at him or, go through all the, unnecessary stuff that he shouldn't really have to go through, because he is LeBron James' son. He doesn't need to do that, but he does want to play basketball, but he does not deserve to be treated like an animal because he is not living up to his father's expectations right off the jump. You know what I'm saying? I think Bronny James eventually will develop, but, LeBron James just developed faster. But, yeah, what do you think?
No say so on that one, but I don't really know who else on the river is, and I
Right.
can always stream it.
We've seen Scottie Pippen's son work his way onto a roster. No one's saying that Scottie Pippen's son is being helped, because when you put Scottie Pippen's son's film on, you say, okay, this is a guy that deserves the opportunity. Like, let's be honest about Bronny. And I respect everything about LeBron James and the way Bronny James is working. You don't get to be ranked 20 to 26th coming out of high school, right? Have an actual cardiac arrest, average 4.2 and go to the combine. Somebody named Fred Taylor Jr., Channing Crowder Jr., Ryan Clark Jr. would not be afforded that opportunity. He would not be spoken about in the way Bronny James is, good or bad, because his father is not LeBron. That's the reason he is getting the opportunities that he has, because of his connection to his father, connection to the most powerful agent in basketball because of his father. Now he does have to go out and perform, but when you look at who he truly is, who he truly was as a hooper, yes, he's 100% elevated by being LeBron James's son. And it doesn't mean that he will end up being a good basketball player. But
And another thing I think you need to, Ryan Clark, is realize is kind of like, okay, like you said, he could play. He's not out there dropping 20, dropping 30. But Bronny James' son has potential. He was a solid player. He could jump high. He can dunk. He can shoot well. From the combine, I heard he did really well in his combine. You also have to understand, before you go and point fingers and say, oh, Bronny James should be doing this, LeBron James should be doing that, you have to understand, too, the NBA is a business, and you don't know how many other people are in on whatever, putting all this together for LeBron James to play with his son. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I get what you're saying on, it's not fair to the other players who might be better, but there's so many other players in the NBA that shouldn't be there, or there's other athletes in the world who also didn't get a spot in the NBA because, the coach on the Atlanta Hawks' cousin's nephew tried out. You know what I'm saying? And there's another athlete who's just a good player with no family who's ever been in the NBA, or no uncles or aunties who've been coaches or trainers or anybody. There's players like that you have to realize who never got a chance. So you have to look, before you start, talking too much on Bronny James. I feel like that's a great story, and that's a great piece of history, and that's something that is, you kind of got to respect it, that LeBron is still playing, and, the fact that, his son was actually good enough to still even hang with those guys. I feel like you have to respect that in some type of way, because, like you said, yeah, a lot of these players earn their spot, and yeah, he probably got a spot because of who his dad was. But you got to understand, it's not just LeBron James and Bronny James; it's the whole NBA. So I don't see why you are pointing out Bronny James on, no, let me stay at the Courtyard Marriott and stuff like that. Yeah, he wants to play, but there's probably a lot of other people who's pushing him, and that believe in him, that he can develop because of who his father is. So if you have a player, LeBron James has a proven track record, right? And yeah, his son is not the best player coming out of college or whatever, but they know his father works hard because who he is, and they know that, and they can take LeBron James' word, versus Scottie Pippen might not be as deep in with the NBA like LeBron James is. So the NBA could say, hey, LeBron James, are you going to make sure that your son, goes to practice and trains and at least tries to get better? And LeBron James would be like, for sure. When he's not at these away G League games, he's going to be here with us practicing. So they probably have it more of a structured understanding versus Scottie Pippen's son, for example. He might have no say so. He was just a good player, like you said, who earned his spot. So, yeah, he has to prove himself, because Scottie Pippen really doesn't have any connections with the NBA like LeBron James. You might not know the situation. So I feel like before you speak on it, you should kind of just look at it as in their point of view and the world's point of view and what the world wants to see. You know what I'm saying? I don't think you should really be bashing the kid like that, you know?
This is the way life works. This is the reason you don't have to ask for a table when you walk up to a restaurant in Miami. This is the reason that Bill Belichick's sons have jobs in the league, or a guy like Sean McVay, whose father knew another GM or whose grandfather knew another GM and had these connections, can get him in the door as an intern. I think he was a quality control guy, whether I think it was Green Bay or San Francisco, but it was part of that tree. Like, that's the way life works. It doesn't happen for us all the time. It doesn't happen in our lines of work. And so when it happens in our lines of work, the worst part about it is it's our people who have the loudest microphone against something that has been working against us our entire existence in this country. And so to me, it's time for LeBron James and Bronny James to just put up or shut up. To me, it's not about Bronny James. It's about LeBron James. It's about LeBron James, who once tweeted, "My son is better than a lot of these guys I watch on League Pass." It's about LeBron James saying out loud, "I want to play long enough to play with my son," which is a presumptive way to say, I expect him to be in the NBA. The first person to ever talk about Bronny James in the NBA was LeBron James.
I mean, his son, from what I've seen, his son could be better than a lot of people in the NBA. You got to understand, he wasn't, it's not like, you act like LeBron had a pull and got his son drafted number 1 or number 10. He's a second round, 55th pick. Have you ever thought about looking at the players who got drafted second round, 56th pick, 57th, 58th pick, and seeing how many points they're averaging in the NBA right now? Have you thought about that? Because I think there's a lot of players in the NBA that his son is better than.
Can you name one?
Off the top of my head, I can't name one, and I don't want to compare players and say, this player's better than that, because I respect the NBA, and I respect if you make the NBA that you're a good player. But I think that it couldn't even be a talent thing right now. It could just be a confidence thing. You know what I'm saying? He takes his shots, and it's not like, so imagine there's been a lot of players that started off cold like that. Kobe Bryant started off cold like that. When he was 18, 19, came in the league, he was throwing up shots, throwing up air balls. Everybody was on Kobe's head, and look what he became to be. You know what I'm saying? So for you to say that about Bronny's son and LeBron James is right. I think his son could potentially, I don't know every player in the NBA, but I don't think he's wrong. If LeBron James says something, I don't think he's far off. I think Bronny James is better than some of the players that are currently in the NBA right now. So.
And so you now can't, when the projections aren't what you want, the projections aren't what you thought, you can't now be upset. You can't now go on the defensive. You can't ask people whose jobs it is to project who will be drafted, to project when they'll be drafted, to not include your son if he has played well enough to be there. The problem is this: it wasn't top 10 in 2024. The problem is it wasn't what you'd hoped or what you'd expected. And because of that, you now feel some way where you've gotten defensive. And I do love LeBron James, the father. I do love LeBron James, the family man. But there's also a reason that a kid that's averaging 5 points a game gets highlights on SportsCenter because he has an alley-oop layup. It's because he is Bronny James. It's a reason why a high school kid who's not the top player in the country has a documentary on him. It's because he's Bronny James. And so all of this comes with the territory. I think the weirdest part or saddest part or most ironic part is that when this mock draft came out, it didn't come out as a bad thing. People were celebrating that Bronny James would one day be drafted. It's just that it's not the King James sort of hype, and I believe that has a...
I mean, showing his highlights, a lot of people are tapping into Bronny James, and like just his story. Let's look. I want to check how many followers Bronny James has on Instagram before I speak anymore, to kind of like show you why they probably show his highlights. People probably want to, or check He has 8 million followers, and he's not even the best player in the NBA or like a top player right now, but he has 8 million followers and he is LeBron James' son. And a lot of players, like the whole storyline, his father's still in the league and his son is in the league. So people are checking in on, people are tapped in, like what's going on with him? Is he progressing? So have you ever thought about it in a way like, yeah, okay, they're showing his highlights because he's Bronny James' son, but there's also people who are actually really interested, and that's what people want to see, and that's what people are tuning into. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a difference between LeBron. I mean, I'd rather see LeBron James' son score 4 points and his father still in the NBA than just a regular average Joe doing a layup, scoring 4. I mean, it's amazing a lot of people, and it gives a lot of people hope, and you have to understand, like, that is a huge accomplishment, and that's why people are like, whoa, that's what people want to see. Like, the fact that he can do an alley hoop in the NBA and actually make the shot, you should have some respect for that his father is still in the NBA and his son is now doing that. He might not be doing it at a level as LeBron James did it when he first entered the NBA, but he's still doing it, and you got to respect that fact.
Affected LeBron.
I just watched Ryan Clark's take on LeBron and Bronny, and I couldn't help but agree with him. He made a really solid point about the way LeBron and his son are handling Bronny's situation with the Lakers G League team. Essentially, Ryan called out the fact that Bronny is only playing home games and not traveling with the team for road games. And honestly, I see where he's coming from. It definitely feels like there's some special treatment happening here. And I don't think it's fair to the other players who are busting their tails, trying to make it to the next level. The G League.
I mean, how would you say that you don't know if Bronny James not busting his tail? There's a lot of players who bust their tail, and they're just still waiting to have that, that explosion. You can't say there's a lot of. You don't know if Bronny James is not busting his tail on sell or not.
Is supposed to be a place where young players can prove themselves and develop their skills, regardless of who their parents are. Bronny is under a unique spotlight because of his father's legacy, but that doesn't mean he should be treated differently from the other guys on the roster. The experience of playing in the G League is about much more than just showing up for games. It's about adapting to the grind of professional basketball, handling the travel, dealing with the pressure, and proving you can perform in different environments. By only allowing Bronny to play home games, it seems like he's being sheltered from all those challenges that the other guys are facing. He's not getting the full experience, and that's what Ryan was really getting at. Think about the players in the G League who don't have the luxury of a famous last name. They're out there, showing up for every game, traveling, and working just as hard.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. They're traveling, working just as hard, but when they get off that plane, nobody's gonna know who they are until they enter that stadium and they put on those Laker jerseys. Nobody's gonna know those people's faces. But when Bronny James gets off the plane with the rest of the G League, he's gonna be looked at and like he's a star. So when you try to say, oh, he needs to, but he's not like the other G League players. I'm not talking about talent. I'm talking about who he is. You get what I'm saying? I'm talking about who he is. You know what I'm saying? He's LeBron James' son. You know what I'm saying? And he's famous because of his dad. And he's more famous than a lot of NBA players' sons. You know what I'm saying?
Damn.
So, I mean, he has 8 million. Let's look up Dwayne. Like, for example, let's look up Dwayne Wade's son. I think his name is Zaire.
Zaire.
Zaire Wade. Let's look up Zaire Wade.
That first one, I believe.
He has 2 million on Instagram.
He's not in the NBA, right?
I know he probably played in the G League too as well, but he has 2 million followers. Bronny James has 8 million followers. Let's look up Scottie Pippen's son. Let's see how many followers he has on Instagram.
And what league does he play in?
He played in the G League. Now he got picked up in the Lakers. Scottie Pippen Jr. only has 486,000 followers on Instagram. So a player that's in the NBA who proved himself still is not as famous as LeBron James' son, which you guys. So just from his following, he's like, as far as like fame, that has a lot, to do with a lot of stuff. He has a lot of more fame than a lot of these other people because of who he is. So you gotta treat him with some type of, you can't treat him like an average person. He's LeBron James' son. Yeah, he wants to play basketball, but he doesn't have to play basketball. And I also don't think it's smart for him to put his life or his life in danger for basketball. It's not his fault he's LeBron James' son and he wants to play basketball and he still needs to be protected. It's not his fault.
If not harder than anyone else to try to make it to the NBA. They don't get the home game only treatment. For Bronny to get this kind of preferential treatment, it feels like an unfair advantage, whether intentional or not. The reality is, he's not going to get the same development as those other players if he's not experiencing the full rigors of the season. The G League is meant to prepare you for the NBA, and part of that preparation is learning how to handle the pressure of travel, road games, and the ups and downs of a full season. Without that experience, how is Bronny supposed to grow as a player and deal with the challenges that will inevitably come his way in the future? Ryan was right to point out that this kind of special treatment could actually hurt Bronny in the long run. It's not about
I feel like the G League is good enough. He plays at the home games. If he plays 20, 30 minutes in a G League game, that's the same as a player being on an NBA roster traveling with the team and only seeing the court 4 minutes and they're actually on the real roster and they still aren't really touching the floor. If he's playing 30 minutes in the G League at home games, what's the difference of a player who's better than the G League players but not as good as the starting 5 or even the starting 10 on the real roster and is only seeing the floor 3 minutes a night or sometimes no nights and still traveling with the team or whatever the case may be? What's the difference?
trying to tear him down or discredit his talent, but it's about making sure that he's being challenged in all the ways that matter. If you're not dealing with the adversity of road games, how can you fully develop the mental toughness and the resilience needed to succeed in the NBA? Bronny might be a talented player, but the truth is, he's not going to get any better if he's not being pushed to his limits. And part of that push comes from playing in tough, hostile environments where the stakes are high. By keeping him on this home game only schedule, it feels like LeBron and the Lakers are protecting Bronny in a way that might actually hold him back from reaching his full potential.
Damn.
I don't agree that. I don't agree to that. I feel like they're protecting him because what's gonna happen if something happens to Bronny James? You know what I'm saying? Like, then everybody's gonna be like, "Oh, you guys knew he was LeBron James' son, and somebody punched LeBron James." It's like, then what? What if something happened? What if somebody robs Bronny James or has him at gunpoint because they know he's LeBron James' son and they know he's coming to Georgia and the D League doesn't have as much security as the NBA players have, so you want to put his son at risk? Like I said, a lot of these other players, these us regular people, we don't know who these other players are, but like, and I know Bronny James, like, it's crazy, like, yeah, I just feel like it's more of a safety thing. I feel like you guys are overthinking it a lot. I don't think it has nothing to do with his heart. I don't think it has nothing to do with his special treatment. I don't think it has nothing to do with him not wanting to be tough. I don't think it has nothing to do with that. I think it has to do with just his safety and the mental side of it. Yeah, you say, oh yeah, he needs to learn these hostile environments. Yeah, players get booed, but like, he's gonna get an extra amount of hate. And they are still trying to develop this kid, and I don't feel like it's fair that he has to go through an extra amount of hate because he just wants to play ball and because his dad was LeBron James. Now, if he was to travel with these teams, that these other fans from the Atlanta Hawks, from the New Jersey Nets, from the Brooklyn Nets, from the Memphis Grizzlies, if he went and traveled at these other states, those fans would try to rip him apart and say, oh, you shouldn't belong here and you just did it here for your dad and holding up signs at a G League game. They would go to the G League games just to fuck with him. And a lot of these people don't even go to G League games, but people would go just to fuck with him. But the difference in LA is he at least has a support group in LA. And before you say, well, he needs to experience that and not be babied, name another G League player that would have to deal with Bronny James would have to go through. You know what I'm saying? Would you want to go through that and risk your life and walk around with G League players and be the only one that's getting shit talked about you because LeBron James is your dad? Would you want to go through that? You could be like, yeah, I would want to go through that, but nah, you wouldn't. If your dad was a billionaire and you was good at basketball and you got picked and you had to travel with the G League team, would you want to experience all the hate that 99% of G League players never experience? LeBronny James will be the only G League player to experience hate. Nobody cares about G League players.
That's crazy. That is true.
Think about it. What G League players get hated on? None of them. Why is Bronny James being hated on? Why do y'all even care? Like, you know what I'm saying? So before y'all go and talk about special treatment in there, like y'all need to know what y'all are really talking about and try to, look at yourself in his shoes and Bronny James' shoes. If I was a billionaire and I was the best player in the world, technically, arguably, I wouldn't want to put my son at risk. Even though if he loved to play the game, I would not want to put my son at risk into potentially a fan recording them saying something and my son punching him and getting sued or something or some, whatever the case may be. So, what do you got to say about that, Dashi?
I think you said it right. There's
Right.
nothing, I can't even argue with it.
I feel like,
He's the first G League player I know.
right. So just, exactly, I can't even name a G League player. I can't even name one off the top of my head so you guys got to take that in consideration and come on, just let the boy play, man. Just let him, you know what I'm saying? Just let him play ball and just let him play, prove himself and you know what I'm saying? I'm sure he has respect for a lot of you guys' words, and you guys are all ex-athletes and stuff like that. So just you know what I'm saying? Just let's support each other and not try to blame and this and this and that. You know what I'm saying? Let's look at it I get what you're saying too. He should but he's not an average person. And before you say, well, all these other NBA players had sons who played in the G League, their dads was not LeBron James. And on top of that, LeBron James is not even an ex-NBA player. He's also still in the NBA. So we never seen that before. And then, to go back on, well, he's only in the NBA because of his dad. Well, I mean, he can hang. I've seen him work out. I've seen him go against NBA players. He can hold his own. So what's wrong with that? Name 5 other second round 55th pick, that are doing something crazy. You know what I'm saying? It's not like LeBron James had him pick number 3 to make him look like he's the best player. I mean, I feel like they're being really realistic. If they weren't, they probably wouldn't have sent him to the G League. They could have just let him travel with the Lakers. They want him to develop, obviously, because they sent him to the G League. But I feel like there's some type of safety concern right there. Because they could have just left him on the Lakers. They don't need to play all 15 players or how many people are on the actual Lakers roster. They could have just made him the 15-man, had 14 players, and make them not play. Or put them in when they're up 15 or 20 points for a few minutes. But they do want him to develop because they put him to the G League. I feel like they don't want him to travel, not because he's soft. It's just because of a safety concern there. You know what I'm saying? A safety and a mental concern there. Because that could fuck somebody up. You know what I'm saying? Mentally. You guys don't know what he deals with, if he has a therapist or if he talks to people and how he truly feels. You don't know what he goes through just because he's rich. That's not cool to speak on. Because like you even said, you didn't experience that. You didn't grow up with a billionaire father. You didn't grow up with your father being the best in the world at doing something. And you want to do the same thing, but you're getting a lot of hate for it because you're not matching up to your father's expectations right off the bat. So just got to be considerate of that. So yeah, this is it. Subscribe to the channel.